and we're ready to conduct tonight's business, which begins with the agenda itself. Does anyone, item 1 is tonight's agenda. Does anyone on the council have any recommended changes to the agenda? Seeing none, is there any objection to adopting the agenda as proposed? Seeing no objection, the agenda as proposed stands approved by consent, and we're on to item 2, which is the meeting minutes from the council's last meeting on October 1st, 2018. Does anyone on the council have any recommended changes or modifications to those meeting minutes? Seeing none, is there any objection to approving the minutes as proposed? Seeing none, the minutes as proposed stand approved by consent, and we're on to item 3, which is public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who's here this evening who would like to address the council on any item that's not on tonight's agenda to do so. Would anyone like to address the council? Yes, Rich, you're welcome. Former council member, nice to see you.
Yeah, my comment is that I would like Rhode Island DEM, the division, and this council to consider in summer flounder regulations a provision that would bring the shore fishermen back into the mix. The way that summer flounder regulations have been going with the increased size up to 19 inches, you can fish from shore and catch many summer flounder in a day. In fact, I've had calls of people that are catching 30 summer flounder and 0 are above the size for keeping, above 19 inches. So in Connecticut, for example, they do have a special shore provision for summer flounder, where they are allowed to keep, I believe it's 16-inch, one fish. This would certainly be biologically make sense. I mean, commercial size limit is 14 inches. And by taking one fish from shore or one, that type of provision, I think it would increase the recreational catch by a small magnitude.
Thank you for that. And Jason, is that something that could potentially be folded into the next round of hearings on recreational summer flounder management?
Yeah, I guess that's sort of my most general comment is we'll be getting into the recreational summer flounder specifications around the turn of the year, so we'll have lots of time to consider those types of proposals.
So thank you for bringing that up, and look forward to hearing that raised again at perhaps a workshop or whatever meeting might take place.
Workshop mid-January, so we're thinking.
Okay, mid-January would be the time and place to delve into that a little bit more. But thank you for broaching that tonight, Rich. Appreciate it. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Yes, welcome, Rick Bellamax.
Rick Bellamax, Rhode Party Charter Board Association. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, council members. I would like to ask the council to consider consulting with the Division of Fish and Wildlife to look at consistency within regulations between federal regulations and state regulations for ground fish, codfish in particular, size limit, and there's also a provision in federal regulations that allow for multi-possessions for multi-day trips. I'm not sure if that's allowed in the state waters. So just trying to ask to have that clarified if there's any changes that need to be made one way or the other.
Are you referring to commercial or recreational?
Recreational.
Recreational.
Yep.
Okay, so again, it sounds like another issue that could get teed up for our next round of workshop and hearings. So thank you for that, and we'll look forward to delving into that coming up perhaps in mid-January. Thanks, Greg. Anyone else wishing to address the council? Seeing no hands, thanks for that input, and we'll move on to the next item, which is the primary item of the evening, which is the November 19 public hearing items. There are 5 species to address, and we'll take those in the order as presented at the hearing. So we'll begin with commercial black sea bass. Pete will provide a brief overview of the issue and the options. The council has in their e-packet all of the public comments offered on all of these issues, some of which came in just today. So if there's any need to clarify any of the latest submissions, Pete can help with that. But essentially the entire public record is before the council for consideration. As well, Jason will offer the division's perspective on each issue as we move through that, and then it'll be to the council for deliberation and a recommendation to the director. With that, we'll start with Pete. Pete will start with commercial black sea bass.
I think we'll just go right to Jay.
Yeah, so you're looking at the, originally we had only noted, for the workshop, we had only noticed the status quo option. Went to the workshop, we got some feedback at the workshop about dropping to a lower limit. You see that there in option 2. And so both of those were noticed. We have received some feedback very recently, at least on option 2, which Pete sent out to you all today. But I guess from the standpoint of the division, we can manage either status quo or option 2. We don't have a lot of guidance as to what's going to happen with black sea bass. We think at this point things are going to remain status quo in 2019, so not going to go up, not going to go down. However, there's still some processes that have to occur before we can say that with certainty. One of those is happening next week. So there's still a little uncertainty here, but if things stay right around where they are now, the division can manage either option 1 or option 2, so we're not offering a preference for either of these.
Thanks. Questions for Jason on this issue? I'll remind the council that on this issue last year, I went back and checked the record, and the council did recommend not dropping below 50 pounds per day last year. That doesn't mean the council needs to be consistent, but if the council wished to be consistent, I just wanted to, for your edification, remind you that that was your recommendation at this point last year. Now comes this proposal to drop to 25 pounds a day during the July period. So to the council for questions, discussion, or a motion. Jeff Grant.
Jason, can you speak to whether or not the division can manage the proposal that was put forward through the public notice? That wasn't noticed, but was given at the public hearing, dropping the days per week and possession limit changes.
I'm sorry, so you're talking about the one that came in with all of the signatures?
Correct.
Yeah, yes, we could also manage that one as well. However, some of the aspects of it, we would have to think a little about as to whether our notice would allow for that change to be made. Specifically, I'm talking about the change in the closed days. And so that we've had some internal discussions about that aspect of this already, and it's not clear that that would be within the guidelines of what we could do for this hearing because of the way that the meeting, the way that the black sea bass information was noticed. For fluke, it was much clearer. We had an option that did something to one of the closed days, but we did not do that here in the notice.
Any other questions or comments? Jason?
Yeah, my question is for Jason. I just wasn't sure, did we catch our allocation of sea bass this year?
Yes, although it's still in process right
Okay.
now. I think we are running a little bit behind, but we went slightly over, to be perfectly honest about it, in particular the warmer months.
Yeah.
So we performed really well. I know folks calling black sea bass management performing well is maybe not the way you would characterize it, but we have been able to manage the quota, stop roughly on time before going over. We are lagging a little bit, but there's not a ton of fish left, even if fishing completely stopped.
Any other questions? Anyone on the Jeff?
But just one more question. Would the pilot program for the aggregate, if they change, if the rest of, if we went with the petition that was 4 days a week or 5 days a week at a different possession limit, would the division still be able to compare the catch rates with the participants in the aggregate to past years? Is that something, I'm trying to figure out how exactly that would work, whether you can feel confident you could come up with a comparative analysis with the changing possession limits and days.
I think so. I take your point in that it would be, I think the most important, that's a really good question. I'm sort of thinking it through on the fly here. we could still, I think there's probably a way that we can factor out the effort piece of it. And so we would be able to still characterize an overall catch rate even with the change. So we'd have to think a little bit about it, but I'm pretty sure we'd still be able to. Some of the biggest elements are that person never fished for, he or she only fished for fluke, and now all of a sudden is fishing for black sea bass. Like those are some of the things that we definitely will be able to see. But changes in catch rates will be a little trickier, but I think we can do it. We'll just have to scale it somehow.
Yeah, because I mean, with summer flounder, you went from 5 days to 4 days and stuff, so I guess there's some issues. Okay.
Yeah.
So I think we're ready for a motion, if anyone would like
I
to
just
state.
one quick question. We have two options before us, but there were other options submitted, you know, in the comments. So are these the only two that we're considering?
Yeah, and I think that's what Jason was speaking to, and Christina Hufschmidt, our legal counsel, is here. And Christina, do you want to just provide some edification to the council regarding any recommendation they might make to the director that might address any aspects of commercial black sea bass that are not necessarily related directly to what was noticed, but would relate perhaps to comments that were offered on the record?
So when you do public notice, you notice out your options for your regulations. And then you have a public hearing, people can make comments, and depending on what those comments are, if that portion of the regulation has been changed or was proposed to be changed, then there's some leeway to consider those changes. But if they're so substantial that the public wasn't given a fair opportunity really to notice those and to comment on those, then you have to, if you wanted to do that, then you basically have to go out and renotice the regulation and redo the public hearing. And so that petition for the changes in closed days, since that really wasn't noticed with the black sea bass, my recommendation to the director is if you would propose that and you voted on that and she wanted to go that way, then I would have her renotice the regulations with that change. There could be appropriate public comment and input on that.
Thank you. So with that, it's up to the council now to proceed as it sees fit. Mike Rice?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt option 1, maintain the status quo next year.
Is there a seconded by Dave Monti? So moved by Mike Rice, seconded by Dave Monti to recommend status quo for commercial black sea bass. Discussion on the motion. Mike, would you like to speak your motion?
Yeah, from what I've been hearing, I don't see any sort of major sort of difficulty with maintaining the status quo. The change to 25, there's clearly public opposition to that, so the option 1 seems to be the most logical to me.
Thank you. Additional comments on the motion? Jeff?
So the petition, the one I think that's a great way to manage sea bass. I read through it, I was like, wow, this makes some sense, you know, for a lot of gear groups. My preference would be to try to go down that road. However, obviously that would become difficult. Status quo would be my fallback, but I really like that one, and I think it's a great way to manage the fishery, and I think it would help a lot of fishermen and the industry.
So thank you for that. So perhaps the easiest way to deal with this might be to do maybe 2 motions if the council wished to do that. One would be to vote on this issue of the possession limit during the July period. And right now the motion is to not reduce it below, to maintain it at 50 pounds. And then perhaps a follow-up motion might be in order to recommend the director consider any other issues that you feel might be worth pursuing, and then the director can consider both and perhaps move on one and renotice the other, or move on both if she sees so fit. So that would be my suggestion. The other way to do it would be to amend this motion, but that might get a little messy. So I'm going to suggest, if the council feels comfortable doing this, that we first vote on this motion, on status quo, on the issues that were noticed, and then we'll potentially take up a second motion. Pete, did you?
I just wanted to show folks what we're doing here, that we're gonna try to just put the motions up on the screen here, so we make sure we're getting them right. So this is just a little middle. So I'm gonna be switching back from presentation mode to working mode, so I can go back and edit this.
Great.
So,
says Scup.
oh, sorry, thank you very much.
That's right, we're,
First time.
first time, yeah, there'll be some bumps along the way, but I thought this is a nice approach to have, motions, put up on the board. So, as Pete is perfecting the motion as it reads on the screen, I'll see if there's any further comments or questions. Yeah, Jeff?
Would there be enough time to get a new public notice back in time?
Well, I guess that depends on the next round of hearings. The question, and I realize Pete's in the middle, but maybe Jason, you can think about this as well, as to whether if the council were to recommend renoticing commercial black sea bass, would there be enough time to consider and adopt that for 2019?
It could, however, not for January. It would probably end up happening February, April. I mean, it would be a quarter of the way through the year.
Thanks. Chris, did I see your hand?
I was gonna say, I'm kind of with Jeff on this. I think that other proposal might be a way of the future, and I think we should consider it, but I also was gonna have the same question of Jason, and I kind of don't like the feeling of, you know, putting regulations in that go for the first 3 months and then switching them for the rest of the year. I don't know what that complication would be, but I do like, I wanted to support Jeff's thought that other way to manage it might be something that's better for the future of fisheries.
And just to be clear, I think had that been brought up at a workshop, it would have gone out in the notice, and we would be right, it would be properly before the council right now. The challenge is when a proposal comes in, you know, after the workshop, after the notice, it puts the director in a difficult spot. So I think we've got all the perspectives out on the table. I do see some hands up in the audience. Would the council like to go to the audience for comment on this? Yeah. Okay, Donald, or Katie, did I see one of your hands up?
I would just like to know what we're talking about. How are we supposed to comment on this if we don't even know what we're talking about?
So thank you for the question, and that's part of what I'm trying to do here is, first of all, I want to make it clear that right now, the only motion before this council is to recommend adoption of status quo, meaning no change, to commercial black sea bass for 2019. I plan to call a vote on that motion now, and then if anyone from the council wanted to offer a subsequent motion, I would entertain it at the time. So just to be perfectly clear, the only thing right now in front of the council is a motion to recommend status quo, no drop in the possession limit, rather status quo for the July period for 2019. That's the motion in front of the council right now.
I may like what Jeff's proposing, I just would like to have seen it before tonight. You know, it might be a wonderful idea, but I don't even think it's going to bring it up tonight if nobody in this audience has seen it.
Again, that's the prerogative of the council tonight to recommend what they wish to recommend, but I think I've tried to lay out the scenario as best I can. Yes. Francie.
I'm also confused. Jeff was at the previous meeting, he was at the meeting before that. This is an interesting time to be talking about another motion. You have a motion before you. I don't understand why we would be talking about this other motion that we haven't.
Let's not talk about any other motion for the moment other than the motion before the council. The motion before the council is to recommend adoption of status quo with regard to the possession limit. And I'd like to call that question unless anyone on the council has any other questions. Okay, so on the motion, all in favor, please raise your hand. It's unanimous, and so the motion carries unanimously to recommend status quo. Now, would anyone on the council like to make any other motions pertaining to commercial black sea bass management in 2019? Jeff Grant.
Yeah, I'd recommend that, based on the divisions, I guess it's a prerogative of the division whether or not they think it can be done in time, that they renotice for the summer sub-period, for the summer periods, the proposal that was brought forward.
Pertaining to aligning commercial black sea bass management and summer flounder management in in the summer period, as I understand your. So that's a recommendation. This would be a motion to recommend to the department, to the division, that the issue that was set forth in a public comment be put back out for public comment in a formal public notice, via formal public notice. It's a recommendation, it's just that. And so there is a motion. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Mike Rice. So the motion is now before the council to recommend renoticing the issue that was set forth in the petition. I'm going to first go to the council for any questions or comments on the motion, then I'll go to the audience because this is a new issue. Yes, Chris Ryan.
I just want to say, because I hear people in the audience are maybe not aware of what this proposal is. You know, I don't know whether we could tell them who actually submitted it tonight. That would be helpful, but it would go out for renotice.
In thumbnail, the proposal.
In thumbnail, the proposal, which was a petition signed by many people, seeks to, we request the following actions. The department and council, first of all, reject any options that call for a reduction in the daily possession limit from 50 to 25 pounds. That matter was just dispensed with. Secondly, align the summer flounder and black sea bass regulations so that both fisheries are open and closed on the same days. This may require an increase in the daily possession limit of sea bass since there would be fewer fishing days. I won't go on. That's in a nutshell what was suggested, and it goes on to talk about avoiding overlaps with the Massachusetts black sea bass season. But in essence, that's the proposal that if this motion were to carry, would be recommended for notice. It would just be a notice to then seek formal public comment on that proposal. It would not be a recommendation to adopt that proposal. Donald Fox.
So to understand what you're saying, or to clarify it a little, just what the proposal is to have sea bass open only when fluke is open?
That's the proposal. So again, it's not being recommended for adoption, but just being recommended for notice. I'll go to Ken Booth and Richard.
So at this point, we talk about notice again through the same process, workshop, public hearing, and back out.
Yes. Rich Hittner?
I read that proposal in the e-packet on the division's website. And that proposal had another key ingredient, I believe, and that was that the daily possession limit would not be 50 pounds, but I believe it was 85 pounds. And so I think that's a big factor, which personally I would be opposed to, because it seems as if currently black sea bass is only open for a portion of the summer season anyway, then it closes. If you begin taking 85 pounds per day, the price you get per pound is going to go down, and the season is going to be shorter.
Understood. Thank you. And I think this is exactly the kind of issue. This is the reason why it would be important to renotice the issue, to have a full vetting of it, given all of the thoughts and opinions that there obviously are on it. So with that, is there any further discussion on the motion, which is, again, to be clear, to recommend that this be renoticed? Jason?
Can we just make sure that what we have as the motion is Pete, I don't know if you can blow that up a little bit.
Yeah, that the issue set forth in the petition, I would just put it that way. And I'll look to the maker of the motion and ensure that this is, that it's clear. Move to recommend to the director that the issue set forth in the petition submitted be renoticed and brought back to hearing. Are you comfortable with that? So the maker of the motion and that, which was Jeff, and the seconder, which was Mike Rice, are comfortable with that wording. That's the motion before the council. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Council ready for the question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. 2, 3, I'm sorry, keep your hands up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2. The motion passes 6-2.
Not in support, which might be.
And the 2, yeah. Lincoln Travis. Opposed. So when you're ready, Pete, we'll switch to the next issue, which is commercial scup.
Scup.
So, yeah, again, there wasn't a lot going on with Scup at the time, so we only noticed status quo. We didn't get any guidance on this part of Scup management from the workshop, so this was the only thing we noticed by way of possession limits and allocations and that sort of thing. So, you know, this is perfectly fine. I just wanted to make one note, and that is there was a change at the federal level on the incidental possession limit for Scup, and we will be following up with that at the public hearing that we've now added potentially a couple of things to already, but we'll be following up with that, and that will be in place. Should be in place in time for when it is relevant, which is that spring squid fishery. So other than that, you know, we're perfectly fine with status quo for Scup.
Any questions for Jason? Would anyone like to make a motion? Dave Monty?
I'd like to make a motion to accept status quo with Scup for the fishery. Second.
Seconded by by Chris Ryan. So moved by Dave Monty and seconded by Chris Ryan to recommend adoption of status quo for the commercial scup fishery for 2019. Discussion on the motion. Any comments from the audience on the motion? Seeing none, back to the council. Is the council ready for the question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. And it's unanimous. Thanks very much.
Who's the second, please?
Chris Ryan. I'm sorry, moving quickly. I don't mean to move too quickly.
I'm learning how to do that.
But you got it. Yeah, thank you for that.
Thanks to you, man. That's really.
Yeah. Okay. When you're ready, we'll pick up with commercial summer flounder.
Proposal 2 for commercial scup.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, the second one up front.
Yep, so this actually came up last year as well, but this came out of the workshop, and that was a proposal to remove the maximum pot limit. And so we thought we'd offer a couple of variants there. So option 1 was to remove the pot limit altogether. Option 2 was to keep a limit, but raise the number up higher. And then status quo is also an option, which is a 50 pot limit. When this came up last year, I actually investigated a little bit. I had always assumed that the pot limit that we had in place was an element of the FMP for Scup at the federal level, but it is not. And so there is no requirement for us to have this 50 pot limit. And the gentleman who brought this up at the workshop, what he was talking about was we have these 10,000 pound per week limits for Scup, and 50 pots makes that difficult to achieve for a pot fisherman. So that was the idea behind his proposal.
Thanks. Question for Jason? Dave?
So this would be a maximum of 50 pots per licensed fisherman, or
That
a
is
maximum of 300 pots?
That is what's in, 50 is what is in place right now. If you do nothing, it will remain 50. 300 would be a proposal to not get rid of it altogether, but to have a number there. One of the reasons why we thought about that at the division was when it comes to fixed gear, there's a lot of discussions with regard to whales. Now, I think the majority of this fishery is taking place in state waters where that interaction is not as great, but it might be easier for us if there were something we had to do with up and down lines. With Scup pots, we would have a number to work with as opposed to no number. However, my sense of this is we could support any of these because you know, the fact of the matter is I think the majority of this type of Scup fishing is happening inshore.
There is potential for gear conflict out of recreational anglers. At 300 pots, I have no idea how many Scup pot fishermen we have.
Additional questions, comments? Mike, Rice.
Jason, do you have data like, in terms of like, trap saturation rates, that sort of thing for scup on these pots? Do you have any idea what a sort of a yield on a pot is at all?
Yeah, it's a good question, Dr. Rice. So I think there is information on that. There's more information for black sea bass. And scup pots, and Jeff can correct me, I think you fish pots as well, Jeff. But my sense is when fishing with scup pots in particular, they're set out as singles, they're not set out in trawls. And so I think it's a little bit more difficult. So there's not an issue because of their proximity to each other being in that trawl. We did also, I can't remember where the comment maybe came up at workshop or maybe came up afterwards, but there was a comment that said nobody fishes that many scup pots anyways. They're not going to start bombing the water with, and that, with hundreds of pots. And that was another reason why we felt the division could support any of these, at least in the short term.
Chris Ryan?
So another question following on to that, Jason, what I was wondering, and I tend to agree that it's better to have a limit than to make it limitless, because there are other things that can happen later, and it's good to have a top end. But I was wondering, you said that the proposal originally came from a pot fisherman who thought he wouldn't be able to get his limit with just 50 pots. So just thinking about that a little bit, can you enlighten me if it'd be more likely to be able to get a limit with 200 pots? I'm just trying to see if maybe the 300 is a number that's unreasonably high.
Yeah, and so the 300 came from just being consistent with some of the other pot limits, namely the Whelk fishery has a 300 pot limit. Just to clarify that, but to your question, and it's sort of what I think Dr. Rice is getting at as well. So we did not do the math on how many, given an average catch rate for a scup pot, would that take. And one of the reasons why we didn't dive that deep into it is because there are other constraints. It is my general impression that these are small boat fishing operations, and so I doubt you could even get 300 pots on the boat in a single trip. And so those things all sort of conflate for me, where I don't know what the number is, what the rotation would be for them to kind of set and rehaul. So.
Dave, sure.
Excuse my ignorance, how large is a scup pot?
Yeah, so I mean, what is a scup pot is also a good question. I don't know that there's a formal definition, so I can tell you we have a pot survey that we run. They are, I don't know, I'd call it half of a, they look kind of more like a cube than a lobster pot, which is more of a rectangle. So if you took a lobster pot and chopped it in half, that'd be about a scup pot.
So I see one hand in the audience, but I'd rather first get a motion in front of the council, and then we could potentially take comments or questions from the audience. Chris Ryan?
Sure, I'll make the motion that we recommend option 2, which is the 300 pot limit.
Recommend adoption of a 300 pot limit, new limit of 300 pots. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Seconded by Mike Rice. So moved by Chris Ryan, seconded by Mike Rice to recommend adoption of a 300 pot limit to replace the current 50 pot limit for Scup. Discussion on the motion?
I just, I'm a little concerned about gear conflicts. Presently, there are a lot of boats around, and these obviously are going to be inshore, where recreational anglers will have potential for conflict. There's no cap on it. I mean, to go from 50 to 300, I don't know if there are two fishermen or 10 or 50. They're going to have 300 pots eventually. I just see it as a lot of pots, increasing them dramatically from 50 to 300, and not knowing what the impact is. I see a potential conflict.
Thank you. And of course, any member of the council is welcome at any point to either vote no on a motion or to move to amend a motion to a level that they're more comfortable with. Further discussion by the council on the motion before you? Jason Jarvis.
I'd like to give a little more education on at least what, goes on down in Westwood. Some scup pots are as large as a luncheon pot. But you would have to have a pretty large boat to put 300 traps on it. To fish 300 traps a day, most scup traps are hauled, set, hauled, set, hauled, set, hauled, set, and then you go back. So I don't think we're going to see everybody that's fishing scup traps put 300 pots in the water. Could it happen? Well, sure. But I'm just wondering if we could make an amendment to drop to 150 pots. I couldn't make it to the workshop. I kind of wish I had a little more information on it. It is a lot of gear. I think of, and I can only speak from where I fish. To have Watch Hill Reef covered with another 400 pots could be interesting for everybody. It's a lot of stakeholders in one small spot. In the bay, a whole different story. It depends. We have a lot of small boat guys down our way. For someone to, like I say, it'd be difficult for someone to fish 300 scup pots a day.
Well, I'd rather do it by, would you like to move to amend to make it 150?
I would like to at least try it that way.
Well, then.
Sure, I would like to make an amendment.
Move to amend.
Move to amend.
To have the limit set at 150. Is there a second to that motion to amend?
Second.
Seconded by Travis Barrow. So moved by Jason Jarvis, seconded by Travis Barrow to amend the motion to have it be a 150 pot limit. Discussion on that amended motion.
I would support it. I would support it. In fact, I'd make it a friendly amendment.
Well, let's just do it. We'll move quickly. Would the council like to take any comments from the audience on the motion? I see a yes, but anyone in the audience like to comment on the motion before the council? Seeing no hands, back to the council. Is the council ready for the question? This is on the motion to amend to 150. Are you ready for the question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. It's unanimous. So the amended motion becomes the main motion. We'll have to vote on it again unless there's any further discussion or recommended changes.
I do have
Sure.
some discussion. I don't know how we regulate how many pots or scup pots are going to be allowed. So if it's 150, does that mean there could be thousands of them and people want to start scup fishing? Because it's like the fishery that obviously there's an abundance of scup around, and if there's not an abundance of other species, will people start scup fishing, and will we have hundreds and hundreds of scup pots around? I'm asking the question because I don't know. There's no cap on it. We could just have as many scup pots as fishermen want. I'm asking the question because I don't know.
Well, right now, I think you can have up to 50 pots per fisherman.
Right.
And this motion, as now the main motion, would allow that limit to increase to 150.
Right.
I don't know what else we can offer in terms of what that would mean in terms of impact. It would all depend on behavior on the part of the regulated community.
So,
Chris?
I'm sorry. Now, I'm not a fisherman, but I know that the guys to my left might be able to give Dave a little bit more information than that. I would, just my intuition of watching the industry tells me that just because you can go to 150 doesn't mean everybody that fishes scup pots is going to triple their pot outlay next year. I really would get that, but I'd rather hear it from.
Jason kind of spoke to that, but you want to revisit that?
Yeah,
same
it's
question?
anybody that fishes for scup knows that it's not a real lucrative fisheries. If you're fishing traps, you're buying flats of clam bellies, pretty much. So if you're fishing 300 pots, 150 pots, and you're using clam bellies for every trap, you may lose more money in bait than you get in scup. Okay, so that's the truth of the fisheries. I think this year the best part of the year, scup were a little over $1 for Joe's. That went on for a little while, and then it drops right back down to, you know, pennies. But again, it can be lucrative at times. But it's not like, I don't think you're gonna see every scup fisherman going out and setting 300 pots.
Thank you. Dave, is that? Yep, okay. Any further discussion by the council? It looks like there's a couple hands, so I'll take Donald Frox, and then I'll take two comments, Donald and then Ken to it. Donald?
That can actually, it's a rebuilt stock, so you need to allow people more access to it. But it can actually drive more people out of it than it brings in because of what Mr. Java said there. If the price goes down to 10, 15, 20 cents, you're spending more than that on bait on it. So, yep, there might be an increase and there might be a decrease. No one knows for sure, but it is a rebuilt stock, so we should allow people access to it. Recreational and commercial, they can both go up. They both can go up.
Thank you. Ken Booth?
Yeah, from going to Jason's motion, I would just be concerned from a management standpoint. Right now, there's a check on it, and if it goes to 150, there's still a check. To take it off, you can go to 300, and the bait issue is expensive. Somebody comes out next month with an artificial bait that's fantastic that costs almost nothing. A couple of people take advantage of it, go into the market, invest in the pots, and you see the chaos that Dave is concerned with. How do you pull back from that? Because now I've got people saying, they said, I just bought 2,000 pots, and you tell me I can't use them? So I would just caution that if you start going up the ladder, go up in gradual increments versus taking it right off, because the unintended consequences could be scary. If nobody's clamoring now to put 300 in or unlimited, then why do it?
Thank you for that. Back to the council. Is any further discussion on the motion? We now have the amended motion as the main motion. This will be the final vote on this issue, and that's to recommend adoption of a new 150 pot limit. Is the council ready for that question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. And it's unanimous, 7-0. Thanks. Now I think we're on to commercial summer flounder. And Pete, I realize we're going really fast, but I can help.
So I'm not going back to the original. The only thing we need is the amended because it becomes a main motion.
Right.
So I'm killing all that. Can you give me the second on that motion, please?
Sure, by Travis Barrow.
Commercial summer flounder, option one. I'm sorry, proposal one, two options.
Summer flounder is another one. In fact, Scup is also uncertain. I didn't mention it because Scup's in a much better place than these other two species, at least as we understood things going into this notice. But summer flounder is another one where we just went through a benchmark. It went to review last week. That review is not final until the reports are written, which will happen at some point in January, I believe. My sense from the assessment meeting, I am optimistic that our assessment will be successfully reviewed and allowed for management use. And so at the time of the workshop, we were talking about potentially a 15% increase. We still don't know what the potential increase could be, numerically, I guess, because it has to work its way through the Mid-Atlantic process, through the SSC, where they, what we know right now are the proposed OFLs. We work that back to an ABC, so that there's still a lot of the process that is left. However, I'm fairly confident that we will see some degree of an increase here. And so this first option is status quo. We would be fine with that, given our authority to adjust possession limits as we go. And then option two, adjust the open days. And so we did go back after the workshop. People were wondering, well, how many days could we open? And so we did the math on that. just to boil all of that down, if you get rid of that one day, we project that we would be right around the quota with a 50% increase with very little buffer. That's why it's written the way it is up there. But it would cover, you know, the dropping of one of the closed days, so you'd be opening an additional day. With that increase, it would cover that, but with no buffer. So if things change, we're basing that on catch rates from last year. So if anything changed there, you know, you could potentially end up with an early closure. So that's basically where we're at. Again, not giving you too much by way of guidance in that we can manage this, we can manage status quo. That doesn't dictate whether we close, you know, a week or more early, but I don't envision that we would have like a month early closure or anything like that. But it could be a week, could be 2 weeks, depending on catch rates. And the issue there is that we don't have too much room, given your previous guidance of not dropping below 50 pounds. So we're locked in at that 50 pounds, and we would just have to close it when the quota was gone. So that's where we're at with that.
Jason, there were some comments at hearing regarding whether Friday or Sunday would be a preferable day if one was going to open. Does the division have any leaning one way or the other on that issue?
So the division doesn't care and which day. However, enforcement did go on record, I can't remember if it was at the workshop, but certainly in the past, that whatever day the remaining 2 closed days should be contiguous. You shouldn't have like a open, close, open, or anything like that. That makes enforcement really difficult. Not speaking for them, something I heard them say direct.
Thank you. Any further or additional questions for Jason? Dave Monty?
Just to make sure that it's 14 inches, not 9 inches.
Not 9 inches.
Yeah, we did not fix that, even though somebody pointed that out at the workshop, sorry.
First time I heard it, okay.
14-inch minimum size is in effect and is not being proposed for change. Thank you for clarifying. Additional questions for Jason on this proposal? Would anyone like to make a motion? Andy?
Like all with option 2, you're kind of taking a chance and you don't know exactly what's going to happen. I'd like to make a motion to go with option 1.
Okay, status quo then, no, keep it a 4-day-a-week fishery. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Mike Roderick. So moved by Andy D'Angelo, seconded by Mike Roderick to remain at status quo, 4-day-a-week fishery, remain closed Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Discussion on the motion? Jeff Grant?
Oh, I'd like to see if we did realize that increased quota. So it'd be like a contingent thing, like if we got a 15% bump, then open an extra day. That would be my preference, you know, a contingent, you know, option 1, if it's less than 15% bump, and option 2, if it's 15% or greater. That'd be my thought, and that way, you know, we're kind of covering our bases, you know, depending on what it is.
So that would have to be in the form of a proposed amendment, because right now that's not embedded in the motion. So it's up to the council whether you want to just vote this up or down, or whether anyone would like to make an amended motion.
I would do so.
Okay, Jeff, and as I understand your motion, you would like to recommend, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I just heard what you said, so let me see if I've got it correct, that it would be a contingent issue based on whether there is an increase in the quota in 2019 relative to 2018. If there is, and it's at least 15% of an increase, you'd prefer to see a 5-day-a-week fishery. If it's below 15, you'd want it to stay at status quo. So that's the motion to amend, and we'd have to get the wording exactly right, but I spoke to the sense of the motion. Is there a second to that? Seconded by Jason Jarvis. So we have an amended motion now moved by Jeff Grant and seconded by Jason Jarvis to recommend, based on the outcome of the assessment and the setting of the commercial quota for 2019, and whether it's at least 15% increase, then there would be 1 open day. You may want to clarify which open day. Sunday. Okay. So Sunday would be the open day, according to this amended motion. And if it's less than a 15% increase, then it would be status quo, and Sunday would remain closed. Discussion on that amended motion.
So in essence, it's option 2.
I didn't know if we had this exact motion in the record. Option 2 right now, oh, well, it's option 2, yes, it is option 2. I'm sorry, if it's at least a 15% increase, then it's option 2. Thank you.
If it's not a 50% increase, it's option 1.
There you go. I used way too many words, thank you.
Yeah.
So, if it's at
Right.
least a 15% increase, option 1. If it's not a 15% increase.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. So, with that, as the clarified motion, Jason.
Just to clarify in potentially a very silly way, so that 15% or if it's greater, you would also
I mean,
recommend.
that seems, looking at just your quick analysis, it's like 15% is right around where we should be punching in no closures. You know, a week here or there, I mean, it's tough to manage, you know, days, but, you know, it seemed like that was about the tipping point.
So thank you, Pete, for, I think that's even better wording. Adopt option 2 only if 15% increase or greater in quota is realized, otherwise option 1. That's the amended motion. Discussion on that. Would the council like to go to the audience for comment? Yes, anyone in the audience like to comment on the amended motion? Yes, Katie?
I would be against this motion right now, before status quo. We still have a pilot program that we do not know what the effects of that is going to be yet. So I would hold off on any changes other than, to the status quo right now until we see how that, how the quota reacts to that program.
Thank you.
Let's give it a year before we make any changes.
Thank you. Additional comments on the motion before the council? Yes, Mr. Parenti?
I would support this motion here, and I would thank you. It's very difficult for us to take all of our gear out of the water every Thursday and then reset it every Sunday. It's very difficult, it's very dangerous. If the weather's bad, we still have to get the gear out of the water, regardless of the weather, it could be gale, warnings, whatever. And by the same token, if the weather's very bad, we still have to get the gear back in the water because then we only have half a week roughly to fish. It seems like the government's always very concerned about our safety until they're not. And when we're handling two 22-pound Danford anchors per set now, which are kind of a combination between a double-edged battle axe and a bear trap. If you have 6 sets, in the water, that's 24 times you have to handle these regardless of the weather, in a small boat, a small open boat. They're designed to be used only in an emergency once in a great while, yet sometimes we have to handle them 24 to 28 times a day. This has been a disaster. I noticed there's no other commercial fishermen practically but myself. So I can see how things have shifted this way, but this 3-day-a-week closing has been a disaster for the full-time commercial fishermen who do it for an occupation.
Thank you. Ken, do I see your hand? Yep.
Yeah.
These are brief comments, but we've already had our public comment period,
Right.
public hearing, so this is just
Yep.
additional comment on this motion. Thank you, Ken.
We'd be in favor of the motion that Jeff put forward. Obviously, you don't want to decimate the season if the increase isn't large enough. On the terms of the aggregate, because I thought about that too, I'd have big concerns if an aggregate program is going to have maybe 10 participants in it, going to allow fishermen 7 days a week to catch a full quota, and you're restricting 300 or 400 guys, 500 guys down a 4-day week. If those 10 guys are going to benefit at the expense of everybody, I have a real problem with how the program's going to shake out in the longer term too. So I just said we do our homework on how that's going to affect the fishery.
Thank you. Yes, two more comments, then we'll bring it back to the council. Yes, go ahead, sir.
On the 15% increase, I think most people are worried about early closure. If the department sees that they're reaching the quota, will they have a mechanism in place where they can go back to 4 days a week to preserve the length of the season?
Jason, I'm not sure how that would.
Yeah, so that it's a good question and something that we've talked about, and at least the guidance that we've had to this point is our authority extends to possession limits, but does not extend to these other management aspects, so I don't think reclosing a day would be within our authority to do.
Thank you. Nor would dropping the possession limit below 50, given guidance in the past, which I believe holds unless changed. So a closure would be the inevitable result of that situation. I'm trying to, Katie, I think you've already spoken on this issue.
It's a question.
Question, go ahead.
For the 15% increase, is that just for summer, or is there going to be an increase for winter and fall too?
The motion speaks to the overall quota for 2019.
Okay.
Overall quota. Okay, one last comment,
Okay,
Ken.
just to go back to Jason, does the council have the authority to make that recommendation on that closure? And the director can follow that? If the trigger is 80% of the quota, you go back to 4 days, or 85%? And that is already set up in the regulation versus the department creating that.
Jason?
I would think that would, if you all developed a motion that had this contingency in it with a trigger, that would be actionable. We could do that.
Okay. That's a big lift, and we'd have to see if the council wanted to go there, but, so I'll just leave it at that. And go back to the council now. We have a motion in front, it's an amended motion.
To Katie's point on the aggregate program, that is just a pilot, correct? I mean, we're just testing that.
Correct.
And so it's temporary, it's just this year, just the testing. There are 10 participants, there will be.
That will be
Around 10, 8 or 10?
It was actually by like gear type, so
Okay.
it might be like 12 or I
Okay.
can't remember exactly.
All right. Thank you.
So back to the council. If the council's ready, I'll call the question on the amended motion, which is the motion that's there on the board. Adopt option 2, only a 15% increase or greater in quota is realized. Otherwise, option 1 is the recommendation. All in favor of that motion to amend, please raise your hand. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Opposed? 2, and the 2 in opposition are Travis Sparrow and Mike Roderick. The amended motion now becomes the main motion. Is there any further discussion before I call the question on what is now the main motion? Seeing none, I'll call the question, and it's again a vote on the exact same issue, but it's now the main motion. All in favor, raise your hand. 6, and opposed? 2, so the same mix of 6 to 2 is the final vote on the motion, with Travis Sparrow and Mike Roderick being the 2 and opposed. As soon as you have that, Pete, we'll... All right, up to, is it commercial Tautog or?
Oh, I might have mixed those up. We'll
That's all right, whatever order you want to do.
Whatever you want to do.
Whatever, Rec Tautog works for me. It's just not there.
Rec Tautog, so we did not, we had a Tautog item that we needed to bring out a little bit earlier, so rather than split up, because we normally do Tautog, commercial and rec together, we kept them together. We don't have anything compelling us to change, so we didn't offer anything, and nobody offered anything at the workshop, so I think the status quo is perfectly fine for the FMP and by way of how the stock is doing, and we just open it per our normal process of opening this stuff up every year.
Questions for Jason? Andy,
Is that
D'Angelo?
December 31st instead of December 15th?
Yes, it should.
Yep. So that's a clarification. The existing regulation runs through, is that what you're saying? Is that what you're
Existing
saying?
regulation should be December 31st, just an error on the fly.
Thanks for that, Andy. So that's current, that's existing. So there's no, so that's what you see up on the board now, is status quo through December 31st. Any further questions for Jason? Any, I see one hand in the audience. Let's get a motion on the table first. Dave Monte?
So move to approve status quo for recreation Tautog
Is there a second to that? Seconded by Andy D'Angelo. So moved by Dave Monte, seconded by Andy D'Angelo to maintain status quo for recreational Tautog. Discussion on the motion by the council. Frank Blount, you have your hand up?
Yes, I know you just made the change, so status quo would be as written in 3.11.1.
Exactly. No change to existing regulations. We were just fixing it. It looked like there was an error up on the board. It does not close on the December 15th. It closes on December 31st. That's my
It is
understanding.
corrected from December 15th to the 31st for that last sub-period.
But that was just to bring it back to where it's
Where
supposed
it
to
is,
be.
is
Where it is now.
3.11.1.
That's my understanding. I don't know that regulation number by heart, but that sounds right to me. He's got it right? Just, he's got it right. He's got it etched on his pillow. Frank knows he's right. Any other questions or comments from the audience, from the public on the motion before the council? Seeing none, back to the council. Any further discussion? If not, is the council ready for the question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. And it's unanimous, 7-0. Thanks. And we're on to commercial Tautog. Once you're ready, Pete.
Two proposals for commercial Tautog. Go ahead, Jay. This
Yeah,
is the
sorry,
first
I was
proposal.
gonna look up the regs. So, yeah, commercial Tautog, same thing here where we weren't compelled to change anything on the commercial side either. There's been no management action at the BSMFC or anything like that. When we came out to hearing, however, option 2 was proposed, which closes that summer sub-period and shifts the allocation, splits it in half and shifts 10% into each the spring and fall sub-periods. You know, again, this is perfectly manageable by the division, so either status quo or this option, we could manage it.
Questions for Jason? I'd like to make a motion. Chris Ryan.
I'll make a motion that we recommend option 2. I remember quite a lot of support for that amongst fishermen, given that having more fish available to catch early in the season when they're there and then extending the season later was better than trying to fish straight out through. So recommend option 2.
Is there a second to that motion? Second by Andy D'Angelo. So moved by Chris Ryan, seconded by Andy D'Angelo to recommend option 2. Discussion on the motion. Anyone from the audience like to comment on the motion before the council? Yes, Rich Hittinger.
I don't think it makes any sense to shift more quota into the early season. We've got a closure for Tautog months of June and July because of spawning. Why do we want to take the spawners before spawning? Why don't you leave the spawners in the water and shift that quota to the late season if you're going to shift it at all? It makes no sense to kill the spawners before they get a chance to spawn. I mean, it's kind of the thought behind minimum size is typically you want to allow the population to grow to the point where they can spawn once before you harvest. By shifting quota into this April and May period, you're harvesting spawners while they're full of eggs and milt. It doesn't make any sense to me.
I don't necessarily want to rehash all the comments that were offered on this at the hearing, but if anyone has anything new and specific to the motion, I'll take some limited additional comment. Ken Booth.
Okay. The Rhode Island Commercial Rod and Reel Association last couple of years proposed closing the spring season. Same argument is that, you know, the argument comes out that, well, we close the fishery May 31st and they spawn in June. If they kill them all in May, there's nothing to spawn in June. So Massachusetts took that position, they closed their spring season. I don't know if we researched that to see how that's turned out. But, you know, we didn't propose it this year because we never had the impetus from the council to take action on that. So this is where it is, but we would be in favor of closing the spring season and spread it out.
Thank you. Anything further from the public? Seeing no hands, I'll go back to the council for any further discussion. The motion is to recommend adoption of option 2, which would shift the present, the quota into the two, spring and fall, and, wait for the summer, if you know, is it July? Yeah, there it is. Pull that up again, I'm sorry, there it is. So this would, the August 1 through September 15 would be closed, so the closure would run, I'm sorry, you have it right there, yes, so the closure would
Run through October 14th.
June 1 to October 14th, gotcha, thank you. Just want to make sure that everyone's clear on exactly what's being recommended. If so, and if council's ready for the question, I'll call it. All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 in favor, opposed? 3, and the 3 opposed are Travis, Barrow, Dave Monte, and Mike Rice. So the motion passes 5 to 3. Recommended adoption of option 2. All right, oh, we have one more. We have, everyone's favorite topic is tagging as commercial tautog.
Yep. So I can start talking about this. So the real reason we brought tautog out early this year was because this was sort of on the horizon. This is an element of the FMP for tautog, and that is a tagging program for commercial tautog. I won't get into super gory detail because we're trying to get through this stuff, and I'll offer that one of the reasons we brought this out, things changed at the commission where this implementation of this is not required now until 2020, but I still wanted to keep it on our docket so that it's a way to get some outreach started on the fact that we are going to have to do this at some point, but basically this is a tagging program, so all commercially caught tautog are going to require a tag. They are the cow ear tags that would be fastened to the operculum of the tautog. The reason for that, and they tested a number of different tag types. The reason for that selection is because the fish can live still, so the live market is still an option for that fish. I thought it was a good comment, so I will repeat it. I don't imagine that's going to be super fun for the commercial fishermen. But this is the main issue. This is different than striped bass in this case, where it will not be the seafood dealers tagging the tautog. It will be the commercial fishermen tagging the tautog. So it's the harvester that has to tag them. There are some bullets up here that give you kind of the gist of the program. We're going to try and pilot it. I'm going to see if I can get a volunteer or two just to kind of shape this thing out in this year. But it won't be an FMP requirement until 2020 unless something happens in this upcoming year. So outreach number 1, that this is coming for tautog. Of course, there was some I wanted to bring this up as well. There was misunderstanding at the public hearing where one of the commenters was talking about this being like a scientific tagging program. This has nothing to do with science. This has to do with making sure that a fish that is caught commercially remains with a chain of custody as commercial into the seafood processor or the restaurant or what have you. So some of the comments that were raised were, how are you going to read a tag? As long as a tag is on there, it does not need to be read by the enforcement officer. You can see if there is a tag on the tautog or not. So this is purely about enforcement and making sure that recreational and undersized fish aren't getting into the commercial market.
Thanks. Questions for Jason? Would anyone like to make a motion?
Actually, I have a question.
Yeah, Jason Jarvis.
I guess it will have to be a pilot program because I want to be the first guy to see somebody put a tag on a 10-pound blackfish. I want that on video. I'm sorry, those things will hurt you. But anyway, there's probably going to have to be some work on what the tags are going to look like, and
that's
all
settled.
Okay, it's going to be interesting.
It's just fishermen are an ingenious bunch. I'm sure you'll figure it out, but it won't be fun at first, I imagine.
I think I'll zip tie it to its tail or something. Oh, it's got to be there, that's right.
Additional comments, Dave Monty, would like to make a motion? Sure, go ahead, Dave.
To approve the commercial tautog tagging program as outlined here, proposal 2.
Is there a second to that? Seconded by Mike Rice. So moved by Dave Monty, seconded by Mike Rice to recommend adoption of the commercial tautog tagging program, which would take effect in 2020. So this is more than a year out in terms of its implementation, but this would be the recommendation to the director to adopt it for that implementation date. Discussion on the motion? Jason?
Just a question, is this a required, it's required?
It is.
Okay.
Under the ASMFC's program, all states have to adopt this program. So that doesn't mean we have to. Yes, it does mean we have to. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
If we don't, then we face a non-compliance finding, and that could potentially lead to a shutdown of the commercial fishery. That's the way the ASMFC process works. So it is essentially an obligation on the part of the state to adopt it. That's it. Any further discussion on the motion? Seeing no hands, council ready for the question? If so, all in favor, raise your hand. And it's unanimous, 7-0. Okay, thanks. Great. I think that, is there anything else, Peter, or did we get through it? That's it. All right. So we have two more items left. The last one is really an FYI, although there's some interesting issues to cover, but it won't take long. Item 5 on the agenda, which is the next item, is striped bass conservation equivalency proposal. Jason?
Sorry, Rob, could you?
I'm sorry, so we're on to item 5 on the agenda, which is the striped bass conservation equivalency proposal.
Yep, okay, so this was a request of the council, I'm not sure, several meetings ago, it wasn't last meeting or anything like that. There was a request that was made, and so we're just following up on that. Basically, it's quick. All we wanted to offer you was summer flounder went to benchmark assessment, so did striped bass. That also recently went through same caveats with striped bass, where nothing is official until the peer review report comes out, and then action is taken subsequently by the commission in this case. I can again offer that my sense is that I'll offer you something a little different here. The stock status for what the information was during the assessment process is not good for striped bass. And so we think it would be a mistake at this point to do any sort of management, conservation equivalency or otherwise for striped bass until that process works its way through and we get some sort of process coming out of the commission, because we wouldn't want to do multiple processes and have staff work on conservation equivalency proposals that would have to be revisited with new numbers anyway. So we didn't want to let it hang for too long. We wanted to follow up with you to let you know it was still on our radar. However, we the division, continue to recommend that we should not move forward with any management options like a conservation equivalency until the rest of the management process works itself out, which I'm guessing won't happen until 2020 would be the earliest opportunity.
Questions for Jason? Thank you. Anyone from the audience wish to make a comment on this? Rick Belvin.
I just have a question for Jason in regards to your comment that there may not be any management changes till 2020. With this new stock assessment that's being reviewed now, and assuming presented to the commission in February, I don't think that there'll be any management changes for 2019 at that point.
So I guess there conceivably could be, however, striped bass. So I don't think it's going to be an easy process. And so I'm kind of thinking my way through, say the commission did something at their February meeting, what that action would be a scoping document. And so stepping out from there, conceivably something could happen in late 2019, but I guess it's, yeah.
Thank you. Thanks, Rick. Any other questions, comments in the audience? Back to the council. Anything further on this item? Seeing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is FYI. There are 4 or 5 issues here. I'll just tick through them quickly. These are issues that the council wanted to sort of keep up to speed on. So these are just sort of updates on these issues that have already been before the council. One is the proposal to open the Block Island Transit Zone to recreational striped bass fishing. There was a notice of advance, an advance notice of proposed rulemaking issued by the NOAA Fisheries. That comment period ran through mid-November. I think it was like November 17th or 19th, I think it might have been. Closed at that point. I checked today, there were 1,302 comments received. So the status of that issue is that those comments are now under review. And by the way, one of the letters was from the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission on behalf of the Striped Bass Board, urging that they hold off on doing anything until the stock assessment process is completed. There's also a letter in the record from Director Coit, and that also happens to be in your e-packet. I know there were several other commenters, some of whom are here tonight. So it's obviously an important issue to Rhode Island's interests. It's very much in a preliminary stage. It may advance to, if it were to advance, the next step would be a proposed rule, and there would be an opportunity to comment on that. If it doesn't advance, then it doesn't advance. So we really don't know what's going to happen beyond that. Any questions or comments on that issue? I think it's a very important issue to Rhode Island's interests. It's been pretty well covered. Seeing no hands, we can move on to the next issue, which is, and by the way, all these will return to as on a ad hoc basis, depending on if there are any developments associated with them. In other words, if this were to go, the striped bass issue were to go to proposed rule, we would certainly bring that back before the council. And just one sidebar, the council can engage in writing its own comment letters on any issues such as this one. And if any council member on any issue such as this one wishes to have it on the agenda for the purpose of considering a letter, and by the way, we did that with the wind issue not too long ago. We could do that with any issue such as striped bass. I just want to float that thought and park it for now, because it wouldn't be appropriate to take it up now, but it could be appropriate in the future if this issue, for example, were to in fact go forward as a proposed federal rule. This council could certainly offer comments through the director on that, and so just feel free to contact Pete or me or Jason or anyone if anyone on the council has any interest on doing something like that on any issue. The next FYI is on the proposal to allow transiting from Block Island with summer flounder, scup, and black sea bass. That refers to Addendum 31, which is a pending management action that is going to be taken up next week. I think it's next Tuesday at a joint meeting of the Mid-Atlantic Council and the ASMFC board. And so that'll be up for final decision and review next week, and we'll certainly report back to the council on the outcome of that process. The next item, proposed changes to commercial summer flounder management, also on the docket for next week. That refers to the commercial summer flounder amendment, another joint action by the Mid-Atlantic Council and the ASMFC that addresses permit requalification, quota reallocation, and landing flexibility. Again, up for final review and decision at next week's joint meeting. And it's going to be a busy week because the next item also is up for review and final decision next week, and that's proposed changes to recreational management programs for summer flounder and black sea bass. All of those items that I just mentioned had public hearings, I think all here in this room. A couple of them were done together, one was done separately, and there was good input from the Rhode Island community on all of those. This is just to let you know that they all remain pending, but they're all slated for final decision at next week's joint meeting. Any questions on that before I turn the floor over to Julia, who has an update on offshore wind development? I'll pause first and see if there's any questions or comments on anything I just reviewed. Seeing none, Julia, the floor is, do you have anything? No?
Not right now.
Okay. Well, you're here as a placeholder, because we all know wind is an issue that's got a lot of legs, and so whenever there are developments, we look to you to report out. But nothing since our last meeting. Nothing of significance.
The DEIS for the Vineyard Wind Project was released, so we'll be working on some comments on that, but it just came out on Friday, and I think the comment period will close, I think it's the end of January, so we'll have about 2 months to put those together, and I'm sure we'll be, thank you, it's January 21st that we'll have for that one, and then the construction and operations plan for the South Fork Wind Farm was also released a few months ago. So some comments have already been submitted on that. We included a statement from the council on the proposed 1 nautical mile east and east-west spacing of turbines. So that's where we are right now, but I'm sure we'll have an update at the next meeting on the wind side.
And do I understand, because I think I read this, that the Coastal Resources Management Council provided a 90-day extension on the federal consistency determination?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
So January 20th, sorry, I'm here representing Vineyard Wood. I'm new to the company. I'm the manager of environmental affairs and happy to field questions and I'll answer them to the best of my ability. It's a
Thank you
big
for being
thing
here.
for me, so, yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I didn't hear, was that correct, that there's, on the federal consistency
That's
determination?
correct. We have to stay until January 20th.
Okay, thank you. Any, Chris Ryan?
I'd just like to encourage people, because as Julia mentioned, the Vineyard Wind DEIS was noticed for public comment, and so, you know, when you get to that point, you're getting towards the end of official ability to make public comments. So if you haven't commented on Vineyard Wind up until now, this would be the best time to do it. So I'm sure you can go on Bone's website, you could probably get it on Vineyard Wind's website, but take a look at the EIS, particularly the fisheries discussion, and if you're inclined to put in comments, now's the time to do it.
And I think there are 4 or 5 public meetings scheduled to review that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there will be 5, yep, and they
Yep.
were released on the Comm website. There should be one in New Bedford, one in the Boston area, I believe, Hyannis, Nantucket, and Martha's Vineyard as well.
There's one in Narragansett, January 9th.
Correct, I'm sorry, not in Boston and Narragansett, and they're all in January 9th, 10th, and then the following week, I think it's the Tuesday through Thursday.
Hello, Karen Bradbury from Senator Whitehouse's office. Thank you for being here, and thank you for adding to that discussion. Any further discussion on any of the issues that we just covered under FYI item 6? Seeing none, we're on to any other business to be brought before the council. Seeing no hands, any objection to adjourning? Seeing no objection, we are adjourned. Thanks very much.